All right, hey, welcome back to the show. I'm Great Grandpa BB. I'm here with my good friend Tom Zocolo. Zocolo.
That's right.
Yes. Dig it. Yeah. So, I wanted to talk about water purification, or somewhere along in that world.
Yeah.
You work in water treatment plant somewhere around here, right?
Yeah, for the city of Akron. I work in the wastewater treatment plant.
Okay.
I work in the laboratory. I've been there for 7 years now.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah. So.
Huh. Right on. You work in a laboratory. That sounds professional, right?
It sure does.
Yeah.
It sure does.
Yeah, I dig that. So I mean, I don't know. Water is a huge issue coming up, and I've been wanting to talk a lot about it. I haven't talked about it on the show at all yet, but obviously fresh water is a big deal, and then oceans are rising, and things are getting crazier. We're mining lithium and coal and fracking everywhere, destroying tons of underground water that we could be using for wells and other things like that.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna come out with a crazy idea right away, right?
Let's hear it. Let's roll with it.
So the oceans are rising.
Yes.
And my thought is that depending on how far inland they go, could we not just build giant canals for water to come inland into huge lakes that we build say domes over top of, so that the solar energy from the sun can evaporate that water into the domes and create fresh water from the salt water coming in.
As a solar still?
Yeah.
I suppose you could do that now.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't have to wait for the ocean levels to rise.
Yeah.
I don't believe that's an effective means of mitigation of sea level rise. For the simple fact that when you talk about say 1 meter of sea level rise, there's so much. There's an incredible volume of water.
Yeah.
That's behind that 1 meter sea level rise. That's 1 meter everywhere across the face of the planet.
Definitely.
So 1 meter times the surface area of the Earth.
Okay.
More or less. That's covered by water as it is.
It's a lot of water.
Yeah. There's no way to canalize that away from submerging the coastline as it is.
Okay. Yeah.
I think what we've seen with even some of the more conservative projections regarding climate change is up to 10 meters of sea level rise.
Wow.
Over the next 200 to 500 years.
Yeah.
And I could be wrong about that. Don't quote me on that.
How many? What was the number?
Maybe 10 meters.
Wow.
This is the thing. This is the thing about this, though.
Yeah.
So I'm not a climate scientist, and I've seen all sorts of different projections, But obviously, the ocean levels are going to rise to some extent.
Right.
And the problem there is, there's so many people that live along the coastline. I mean, something like 80% of the human population is within 20 miles of the coast.
So you're seeing the whole climate refugee idea, where people, it's really hitting people right where they live in the most, really.
Yeah. Right, yeah.
That's, New York City, when you talk just even the coastline of the U.S. on the eastern coast, you got Boston, New York City, you got Philadelphia, Baltimore, just that stretch, is one of the most densely populated in the world. Coastline in California, the coastline of China.
Miami.
Right, yeah.
Miami's going to be the first one to go.
Right, yeah.
They're right there on the water. They're on limestone. The water table is right there.
Yeah,
Cities like that are, they're very seriously imperiled in the next 200 years, certainly.
Yeah.
And that's not, even apart from sea level rise, you're talking about the increased incidence of, megastorms.
True.
That are going to cause unprecedented levels of property damage along the coast.
Yeah, all the hurricanes coming in already,
Yes. A feedback loop there with, more, a hotter Earth.
Yeah.
More thermal energy in the atmosphere, leading to more powerful storm cells.
And there's all kinds of crazy ideas to try to mitigate this happening right now too. I know that there's people talking about putting different things like floating reflective things in the atmosphere, or even above the atmosphere in space orbiting, right?
Yeah. Or you could do things with silica dioxide, which is just dust. You know,
right?
like,
yeah.
Just with reflective properties. You know, there have been numerous natural geologic events that have caused like very significant periods of climate cooling.
Right. Yeah. Just volcanoes, exploding and even meteors and things like that. Yeah.
Certainly. I mean, and you can go pretty close to a nightmare scenario with that as well.
Right.
I mean, if you think about, the extinction event of 65 million years ago.
Yeah.
The sun was blocked out.
Yeah.
For a good long while.
Yeah.
Not cool.
No. Yeah. Very cool, actually. But
very, very, very cool. Yeah.
For us, anyway.
Yes,
I mean, like
absolutely. Like the mammals rise.
Yeah, it would have been pretty hard to like coexist with dinosaurs.
Oh, for sure.
I did see some crazy conspiracies the other day about like giant humans that existed on the planet at one time. They're talking these humans
the
were
Nephilim?
like, is that what it's called?
Well,
yeah, like 50 to 100 feet tall humans or something.
Whoa! No, I haven't heard that.
Yeah, like there's like some. They look kind of like doctor pictures, but I couldn't quite tell. But it looked like they had the skull was like this big. And then the scientist that is like, or the anthropologist that's, taking the dust away is like, like this is the skull of this thing right here. And they're like dusting it off, trying to find it.
Yeah.
But it's like, I don't know, unless I seen it or, like it'd be hard to believe,
Yeah.
I mean, who knows, like, and that's the thing. It can't be completely disproven that gigantic humans didn't live here, I guess, unless we didn't find any evidence, I guess.
For sure, yeah. So definitely, lack of evidence is not disproof.
Right.
But you have to look at like what is probable to occur.
Right. That's true.
You would expect to find intermediary phases, right? Because how does like our ancient anthropod ancestors, right?
Yeah.
I almost said arthropod.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we're in the Anthropocene right now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it just means like human, or I guess, but
right. So our ancient hominid ancestors, I mean, they were pretty short, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of them, like Australopithecines, were like 3 to 4 feet tall at their adult height.
Okay.
True. And so there's a natural progression where as we become more upright,
and
our stature improves, nutrition improves, like the average height of our human ancestors increased. You'd expect to see somewhere along the line, if there were truly 50 feet tall, humanoid like beings, you would expect them to like gradually increase, and there's just no record to corroborate that.
You're right. That's completely correct. I don't even know why I was entertaining the idea now, like other than...
Well, you can see all sorts of stuff. And ultimately, if somebody said, here are the bones of a 50-foot tall human being that are found in this geological strata.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, well, does the carbon-14 dating check out? Like, how else can you verify that this was a real living thing?
Yeah.
And not like a manufactured object, Is the bone the correct composition?
And anthropology is so weird, man. Like, just being on Kent State's campus, there's kind of like real big in anthropology, biological side of it. Yeah. Because of Dr. Lovejoy being there. And he had complete access to this one fossil. I took the class in it. I somehow got into it because I was like made friends in the department,
Lucy?
It was an Ardipithecus. It wasn't Lucy, but it was real close.
Okay,
right?
Nice.
And this Ardipithecus was about, I think, I want to say 5 million years ago, but I don't even know if it was that long ago. It could have been a lot quicker, like 3 or 2 million years, something like that. But anyway, the story behind it is that so I think it might have been 1.7. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Yeah. The story is that the pelvis bone is like half chimpanzee and half human. So they think that it's like one of the links between walking on 4 legs versus walking on 2 legs kind of thing.
Like a common ancestor scenario.
Yeah. And so, but what's weird about that whole thing, and I found that out like in the class and like studying like the articles done by other colleges and things like that, is that no other college is allowed to even study the fossil firsthand. Like only Kent State is allowed to like, see it and study it firsthand for some reason. They have like exclusive rights to it or something. Yeah. And a lot of professors were upset about that. I found out when in my research, and I'm just like, oh, okay, that's interesting,
Perhaps it's because they wanted the rights to any of the scientific achievements or insights that came from the study of the skeletons.
Yeah, it's probably something along those lines, and then they can get grants for that, probably, or whatever,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's super weird to me, though, how, like, science is so, like, such an in club, like, even just, like...
In a lot of ways, yeah.
Yeah. The science, what do you call that, JSTOR, and all of the science articles that basically, all the peer-reviewed journals.
Yeah.
You really only have access to those if you pay for them. Or if you go to college, you get those for free, essentially.
Yeah.
For the time that you're at the college. That guy, you ever hear that story about that, the guy who invented Reddit tried to, like, put all of JSTOR on the web for free?
No, I didn't hear about that. That's cool, though.
Yeah. Well, it ended badly for him, but yeah, that's a sad story though. Like, he was a really cool dude. Ended up getting like a ton of people behind the idea of net neutrality when it first hit the scene back in like maybe I want to say like 2011 or 2000, like maybe even before that.
Yeah, when it became a topic of discourse.
Yeah. Like nobody knew anything about it, and like this whole like thing was gonna pass to censor the internet real heavy at that time. And then dude's got a hold of this guy. His name was Aaron Schwartz. You can look him up. He has like keynote speeches in a lot of different tech, festivals and things like that was going on at the time.
Yeah.
But he almost single-handedly got like a ton of people together for this one issue, and actually turned Congress's whole vote around, which is unprecedented, for like a normal, movement of a population, in the United States, any time in recent history, really.
Yeah.
And then he got a little overzealous and started, pushing like the bounds of what is freedom and what is not, kind of thing, with the JSTOR and the science journals. And then FBI got involved and started like threatening him with like different jail sentences and whatever. And then one day he just ended up like hung in his closet, like, and he was dead. And they're like, oh, well, he committed suicide, I guess, or whatever. And it's like, okay, well, damn. Like, he was a really cool dude.
Yeah.
Had a really cool girlfriend. He was like a teacher at MIT, had like, staff.
It seemed like he had a great life.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that definitely leads one to wonder.
I know.
You know, like, was that an assassination?
Yeah.
Or was this just a troubled man who had an outwardly like, good life? Because that happens too.
That's true too.
It's really hard to say.
Yeah.
And but you definitely have to wonder. I mean, Jeffrey Epstein winds up dying by suicide.
I know.
In a prison cell, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right, and that's possible because he was facing all sorts of like criminal charges.
Yeah.
But on the other hand,
I
don't know. I don't
know. And also like Fred Hampton. Well, Fred Hampton they didn't consider a suicide, but that was like they broke in, just shot the hell out of the place, kind of thing. But, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's really weird. Whenever you're rocking the boat, there's always people that are freaking out about it. I think partially because I don't know. I mean, like the way the system's set up, it's like afraid of new ideas. It like, and what's really weird is that like we've had how many new ideas? Like in 1905. Everyone was riding horses in New York City, but then by 1912, everyone has a car, and you saw maybe a horse, but it was weird,
Yeah.
Like the paradigm shift that happened in a matter of like 6 to 8 years, right there, was just unprecedented. Type of just okay, now we do this, Oh wait, now we have electricity, and we don't have to turn butter anymore. It's like, wow, okay, this is an entirely different world overnight. Many times over, all through the beginning part of that century, and even all through the entire century. When you think about like the 80s and the whole, PC revolution, personal computers, and then the internet happened by the 90s, and like I mean, really, the new ideas that have been completely turning everything upside down have been happening, like, seems like every 20 years it's an entirely different, like, thing, you know? And so, but everyone's still afraid of it at the same time, so it's like, if you're moving a little bit too fast, you know, like, you're the one that gets caught up in it, you know? Like, I don't know, like, a lot of the stuff I say on this podcast, I feel like I've thought about for years, but I never wanted to say out loud. But now it just feels like it's old hat, you know?
Yeah, right. Yeah, because, I mean, we've all discussed, you know, these types of ideas about, you know, the evolution of technological progress, exponential rates of change, even, like, conspiracy theories about, like, the power elite assassinating those who threaten them.
Right,
you know?
Yeah, for sure.
But I mean, it's still worthwhile to, like, kick back and forth because, I mean, how else do we make sense of the chaos of the world around us?
Yeah, that's true.
You know, like, we live in an incredibly chaotic reality where there's all sorts of information that's bombarding us all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and it's really difficult to sort it all out if you just keep it as a mental phenomenon.
That's true. Yeah. You got to speak it out loud to kind of put it out there so you can even hear your own voice say it out loud.
Yeah.
And then it's like,
a lot of the time when you say stuff out loud, you're like, I don't know if that's a good idea anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Or maybe you're like, by George,
wait
I
a minute.
gold.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. Yeah, that's so real, though. You know.
Yeah. I'm sort of struck by an idea, sort of at the confluence of the two things we're talking about.
Okay.
Namely, like this progressive technological evolution and this sort of idea of the power elite that you hinted out.
Yeah.
And I wonder if this is the case, if technological evolution is only permitted, if you will.
Right.
So far as it allows entrenched power structures to capitalize on the technological advancements.
Yeah, right.
You know, so for instance, like, we're sort of entering an era of techno-feudalism.
Yeah.
You know, where the internet, digital space, is chopped up into little fiefs by a few major tech companies. You know, and that,
for sure,
for the most part, is like, you know, assisting the process of business as usual. Yeah, it is disruptive in some regards.
Yeah.
But, you know, McDonald's and Wendy's are on Twitter.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. My grocery store is constantly like, do you have the app for our grocery store? I'm like, I don't even know what grocery store I'm in right now. Like,
for sure, dude.
I just need food. I don't. Yes. Why do I need to bring my phone into this situation right now?
Yeah. Pretty soon there's gonna be Giant Eagle Prime.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
That's already what Amazon's doing with Whole Foods.
Yeah, that's true.
Like subscription service. Like,
and then you can just like walk out the door without paying, right? Like at a cashier or register.
It just zaps your cell phone.
Yeah.
That was 0.05 bitcoins.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I used to mine bitcoins a little bit.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh man, how are you not rich right now?
I know, right? I mean, it paid for my computer, you know?
There you go. That's something.
I know, right?
That's something. That's a good magic trick.
My computer paid for itself. Voila.
There you go. Presto changeo.
Yo. Yeah, that was really cool, honestly. Mm-hmm. I ended up getting like an ASIC miner and had it mining like all summer in 2020.
Nice.
And then I got it for like $500. It was like one of those like kind of chance scenarios. I studied the hell out of it though. Like I was what do I need? What is still usable? What is old tech? You know, that I can still profitable and all of that. You know.
Yeah.
But I found one that wasn't. That was like $500, and it was like a year old, which was really old in Bitcoin mining. You know, apparently that stuff runs out of profitability really quick.
And it was probably run so hard in that 1 year.
Right.
That how much useful lifespan did it have?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what was crazy about it is that I ran it all that summer and into the winter until someone started hacking in, because the whole interface for it was just real like primitive and easily to be hacked, you know?
Yeah.
So I just kept having to go in there and kicking that guy off and redirecting it, because it just got tiresome, and I sold it. But I sold it for the same amount that I bought it for.
That's cool.
Which was crazy.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, cool. I got all this Bitcoin, and I got that, and I sold it out for the same amount and didn't lose anything, and
Yeah.
And then I built a computer with that money, and then got a graphics card and just started mining from that, and that was profitable for, maybe about 6 months or so.
Mm-hmm.
And but also I stopped because I didn't want to use that hardware like that to that extent anymore, because I know that like chip shortages and just the expense of graphics cards is gonna keep going up, I think, in the near future.
They seem to be hitting various price breaks,
Yeah.
And especially as the technology moves on, there's more dedicated mining hardware that's being developed.
That's true.
And so, like, all of like these consumer like PC products, they're coming down in price.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I took some advantage of that. I had my old graphics card. I was able to sell 3 years out for something like $250 more than I bought it for.
Yeah.
And I bought a superior graphics card.
Yeah.
For like $500. You know what I mean? It was just like I was at this weird moment and like, okay, I guess I'm gonna do this.
Yeah, I mean, the prices have been going crazy, weird for those things. Because when I bought my graphics card, it's $400. Yeah. I looked at it like 6 months later, and they're like selling them for almost $2,000.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, and then the price went down recently, but a thing I saw just yesterday, they're talking about how China shut down. They have this whole like zero tolerance policy on COVID in China. Yeah. Where like they just shut down like the entire city of Shenzhen, China, which is like
there a few cases of COVID.
Yeah, there's like 60 cases, and like
they're like, nope, stop now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's fucking up a lot of things in America that need chips.
Global supply chain problems, man.
Yeah, Foxconn is there, so like iPhones and all that, like, but yeah, it's. If China can just do that just to fuck us up, like like our whole like idea of globalization and making things cheap as possible has like come back to bit us essentially.
What you see now, like a lot of tech companies, especially foundries, like chip companies, are responding in kind with like, okay, we're going to reinvest a lot of our record-shattering profits over the last 4 or 5 years, because they've all made a huge amount of money, into like expanding the capacity of their foundries. Intel is building a huge foundry. It's going to be the largest foundry on earth in Columbus.
Wow.
They're expanding their Arizona facility. They're going to spend I think $19 billion on a foundry in Europe.
Wow.
Like Texas Instruments. Also, they make more like PC chips, but all sorts of chips. Many are used in vehicles. They're expanding their capacity.
Huh.
Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing. Taiwan, they're expanding drastically. That's awesome.
Yeah. And that's what needs to happen for sure.
Yeah.
I do like to hear that it's happening in America too, because it becomes like a weird type of like financial warfare, like when
it does absolutely.
If China and then there's the whole thing where as far as like the dollar supremacy or what people base the money system on, like what is the supreme currency in the world, and right now it's still American dollar.
Yeah.
But like when America goes kind of full bore and shuts down the Russian economy because they're at war, and it hurts a ton of people in Russia who are like, most people in Russia are against the war too. And it's like, why would you hurt the Russian people when really it's not their fault,
It's not their fault, and they don't deserve to suffer.
No. Yeah.
But like, we're sort of in such a fucking weird situation.
Yeah.
Like with the Russia-Ukraine conflict, because Russia has more or less threatened to use their hypersonic nukes.
Oh yeah.
If NATO intervenes directly, right?
Yeah.
And so like, we have to do something for the Ukrainian people, because they don't deserve to be slaughtered.
Yeah.
By what amounts to the Red Army.
That's true. What I mean? That's true too.
You have to do something must be done.
Yeah.
But how far can you push the envelope?
Exactly.
Without precipitating World War III, and that's a tremendously difficult problem to try and solve.
I agree. But the consequences of us pushing hard in the wrong spots makes the Russian economy go in a different direction. Yeah. They're like, well, how do we pay for stuff? Yeah. Let's just go to China,
That's right.
And then that makes their currency more powerful overall.
It does.
And and then that makes things a little bit different. Like, I don't know if that's a good thing or not.
Yeah, so it absolutely is going to affect the geopolitical balance of power.
Yeah,
globally speaking, like over the next 100 years. This is a very significant change. I think that we're watching happen in real time.
Yeah.
You know, to some extent, I think this is Putin's long-term strategy anyway.
Could be, yeah, just to upset the balance a little bit.
Yeah,
because everything's kind of precariously perched in a way.
Yeah. There's sort of this idea of like, you know, a Eurasian economy, and then there's like the Western economy. Like, if you will, like Eastern, Western power. It's a very old narrative, but it seems to be revived, especially by the flagrant acts of aggression.
Yeah,
Putin's government is more than happy to commit. So.
Yeah, and really, I mean, it's not. World War II wasn't all that long ago either, honestly.
Like, no, it wasn't. No, it was not.
It's like 70 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, I still know people who were alive during that time.
My grandma.
Yeah, exactly.
My grandma, dude. Like, something I found really troubling is that, my grandma, she was watching, like, the Ukrainian refugees flee on the news.
Yeah.
And she's like, that was me.
Right.
I'm like, oof.
Wow.
Grandma. Because, I mean, she grew up in Croatia. Croatia, the former Yugoslav Republic.
Yeah.
And they fled to Austria. They were ethnically German.
Yeah.
And, as the war was going on, there was some local hostility towards Germans, understandably.
Yeah.
But, they had to flee. They spent the war in Austria, just kind of hiding out.
Yeah.
But she had that experience, of her family, like, losing everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and, the countryside was absolutely decimated. Granted, like, she made it out okay. Her family survived, thankfully.
Yeah.
Because I made it here.
You get the shirt on your back and you're like success,
For sure, but yeah. But that really hit me, because she has lived through that. And here we are 70 years later. We like to think of humanity as having progressed beyond this type of barbarism.
Right.
But it has not.
No.
And to me, it also underscores, like, a lot of these other military conflicts that we've had, where the United States has been the foreign aggressor.
Right.
And you have to say, man, what's so different about this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we just like the Ukrainian people better?
Yeah, exactly. And that's a really hard thing for people to be, I mean, because it's like they stopped covering that stuff in the news like a long time ago. So people forget that America's been at war and dropping bombs for a long time.
About nonstop.
Yeah. For the last 20 years. Easy,
Right.
It's sickening. There's a definite sickness to the whole like kind of empire mentality. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. This whole conversation is getting really heavy.
For sure, dude. We started with the oceans swallowing up all the coastline.
I know, right?
and here's the impending darkness.
Techno-feudalism happening there somewhere.
The Titanic empires coming around to clash once again.
the hope of like blockchain technology has been dashed. Like decentralization and all that.
Yeah.
Oh man, I don't even know. I mean, it's so big, like I think that these conversations need to happen just because we all need to like at least keep it in the back of our minds what's going on so that like I don't know, we can think about it on our off time, I guess, because it is important stuff.
Sure. One thing I've been kind of grappling with about this is that the relative safety that we enjoy in America and the relative privilege that we enjoy as Americans is really not how the world is.
Right.
And that's not even to say that we have it even best among, the so-called first world countries, but there's certainly a lot of people that are suffering in this country, especially, the severely impoverished, especially minorities. But on the other hand, like, when's the last time a foreign country invaded the United States?
Yeah, I know.
It's been a very long time.
Yeah, like the British Empire, maybe? Or,
Well, I mean, maybe the closest analog is the Civil War.
Yeah.
Because that was a domestic warfare.
Yeah.
And that was the last time that, there was, like, mass carnage like that on U.S. soil.
Yeah.
I mean, you could talk about like some of the U-boat raids that were done.
Yeah.
In World War I, World War II on the coast, but
and people don't even think of like time periods like that either. You know, in a large extent from in people's day-to-day lives. You know, like they're like, well, how long ago was that? Was that in the 1600s? It's like, all right, no, there's there's a whole lot of happened in there. I think about things in timelines a lot though too. You know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think that's an important. It's important to have like kind of your own historical timeline in your head, you know, with your own bullet points that like interest you, so that you kind of like know what was happening when and why things happened, and it's really hard to even know where you are in the whole span of things, you know, sometimes.
Yeah.
It's like saying, oh, well, man, guitars are really old, you know, like electric guitars, no, you know, that's an old type of music, we shouldn't play that. It's like, yeah, they've only been around for like 70 years, really. It's really not that old of an idea, you know?
For sure.
But everyone's trying to find a new sound, and, I mean, we're both musicians, we both know, like, all the gear, you know, that goes in, trying to, like,
go zany for it.
Yeah, right. It's its own thing. I mean, that's a great thing to be a part of, you know.
It is. Well, and it's such a joy to like just sit down and just try to create something.
Yeah,
you know, there's something that's so beautiful about that and pure about that, and that's what keeps me coming back to like playing guitar and like making music.
Yeah.
You know, in some ways like it's purely escapist, but on the other hand,
right.
Like, when you make something that really like has its artistic integrity, or it can like really stand on its own, there's like kind of just nothing like that feeling, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Even just, I don't know, it's like you go so far with it too, and like it's when you constantly like try to reinvent it, it's always like going back to like fundamental ideas sometimes too, you know? With me lately a lot, I just been like kind of focusing on like little 1-minute clips for TikTok or whatever, right? And it's just like, I don't know if I've ever really tried to write like that before, but a lot of times I'll find myself, if I'm just trying to get like a quick clip of like an idea, you know, I'll just be like doing something where like, it's like, oh, I figured out how to use the arpeggiator on my MIDI keyboard, so I'm going to use like these arpeggiations and then just move like one finger at a time and find all these voicings on this one chord, you know?
Yeah.
And it sounds really cool because I'm using, you know, a sound that I like and like this arpeggiation technology, and I was like, how do I make this my own? It's like, oh, I'll just put this suitcase and hit the bass drum with my foot while I'm doing it, and put the camera over top. Okay, cool. This is looking cool.
There we go. There we go. You know, sometimes like really the best, how should I say, the best fuel for inspiration and creativity is some sort of imposed limitation.
Yeah.
Because, you know, a lot of the times, you know, I have so much equipment and options available that you just get overwhelmed by it. Or you get stuck like twisting knobs.
Yeah.
Like you just think, I'm going to explore this arpeggiator and these chords. I'm going to see what I can do with it. Like, how do you arrange it?
Yeah.
I want to maybe clue you into like something I tried a couple years ago that I found really fruitful. It was this the subreddit, right?
Okay.
Called Song a Week.
Oh, cool.
And it was, you know, there was a prompt every week. I didn't, like, they did one for, you know, every week of the year. I only did it like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
But I just found it so freeing because they're like, write a song about this and maybe use these types of ideas.
Yeah.
One of the themes was write a song that is no longer than 1 minute. Like, express a complete musical idea in 1 minute. And I, like, had so much fun doing that, man. I really did.
Yeah,
you know?
for sure.
Yeah. Or, you know, and it even, what was cool is, like, it encouraged me to even just put down the guitar. There's no guitar, no bass on it. I just, I made, like, a rhythm track.
Yeah.
Just using the sounds of my voice.
Oh, cool.
And I just, like, sang a tune over the rhythm track.
Nice.
And it was like, yes, I think I did it. You know?
Yeah.
It was just strange. But, yeah, that type of limitation, that type of, you know, artificially imposed constraint, it just encourages you to explore. Like, what can these sounds do? Like, how can I use these to express an idea?
And I think that's completely what it is too. Because otherwise, I don't know if. I saw a guy had the studio set up yesterday where he's like takes you on the studio tour. He's like, and in this corner I have my Japanese synthesizers, and in this corner I have Russian synthesizers, and in this corner I have all of these keyboards. And it's like, wow, okay, like like how do you? And he's like, well, I think about them in terms of islands. Like, this is my island of Japan or whatever, and so that's what he uses to make a song out of, just those instruments in that pocket or whatever, Yeah. And so it's like when you have like these like pockets or islands of things, that's like in his mind, that's limitation, I think.
Yeah.
And he didn't express it like that, but I think that's why he's doing it, Mm-hmm. Because like otherwise in that studio, I mean, he has like a Roland Juno over here that's buried underneath, Fender Rhodes that's somehow on like a stand above it, and like like all these, every drum machine you could think of, and but when I was recording back in October, I was definitely in that vein though too, like where in my mind the only instruments I could use was like a real drum kit, because kind of I had a focus of like learning how to play drums. Nice. And so I wanted to like that was one of the reasons why I was doing the album. And then I had just got this like clone of like an old Roland 101 synth, and like so I was like, okay, this is the only synth I'm gonna use, and these are the only drums I'm gonna use, and I'm not gonna use any guitar. And I was basically just using like a bass with like a synth pedal and like keys. I had an organ and some EPs and stuff. But
nice.
Yeah. I mean, as it's gone, I've kind of like added a few different other things, But like that was like the initial 2 weeks where I recorded everything that basically it was, like.
And that framework that gave you the nucleus of the idea.
Yeah.
Here are the songs.
Yeah.
What's really like this, and maybe then you go back and say, oh, okay, well I can enhance it this way.
Yeah.
But this is like the beating heart.
Yeah.
Right there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's something I remember Cobain saying a long time ago about like how if you're taking longer than like a week to record an album, like the ideas will just dissipate. Right. Yeah, he said a week.
I'm in trouble.
Yeah, I know. Well, and that's also like, I mean, that's early, 25-year-old Kurt Cobain who just like got a week in the studio and killed it,
Yes.
Whereas like I have a lot of other things to do with my time,
Absolutely.
Like,
yeah.
But I did knock it out in 2 weeks, and I wanted to make sure that I did. I was just there for it. I had all the songs already written from all summer, so like, it was just time for that particular album.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's really cool. So how do we take this idea of limitations and apply it to all of our other problems in the world, right?
Human beings are limited, period.
That's true, yeah.
Limitation is the fundamental human frustration.
Yeah.
We only live so long. We can only learn so much.
Yeah.
We can only do so much with the hours of the day before we're too tired to function.
Yeah.
There's some weights that are always going to be too heavy to lift.
Yeah.
They're going to be... yeah. Some places that are too far away to go.
Yeah. So I don't have enough money, or whatever the constraint happens to be.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So I think maybe that's like the fundamental characteristic of our reality as human beings, and perhaps we need to learn how to function while embracing those limitations. And that's not to say that we're so limited that we're totally screwed and we have like such a limited ability to act. There's no way for us to overcome the problems that we face as a species. Right. I don't believe that at all.
Yeah.
And I also subscribe to the somewhat contradictory belief that even though the limits exist, they are often the true limits are often way beyond where we think they are.
Right.
There's often a lot of gas left in the tank, and we can go a lot further than we believe is possible.
Well, Thomas Malthus, right? Like, and his whole like idea.
Limits to growth.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would have screwed 100 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
According to his predictions at that time.
He didn't predict the Haber-Bosch process, which has its own problems, but
right.
There's a lot of people on Earth now.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
A lot more than he thought that we had carrying capacity for.
Yeah.
That's
right.
for sure.
Right, for sure. You know, I think, you know, in terms of like managing, like, you know, the human population as it is, availability of resources, you know, and the factors relating to climate change, it's possible to like move into like a global consciousness where we are more actively managing those resources in an intelligent way.
Yeah.
But I think that's about the only way to get there.
Yeah.
You know, and how do we effectively administer something like that when we're also like busy trying to kill each other? You know?
Yeah, that's the hardest part, because people, I think, are just frustrated. We're in like a weird quagmire of problems right now that like that is frustrating for a lot of people. And so how do you even have like Buckminster Fuller used to talk about the idea of even like an idea kind of like the UBI kind of thing, where like he was basically saying, like, if we just paid everyone to like stay home, the people who want to work naturally would just be working anyway, and they would probably be able to solve, like, you know, 1% of the population could solve probably most of the ideas that we need as far as what we consider work, right?
Yes.
That would keep people from being frustrated, I think, in a lot of ways, you know? Yeah,
well, the alternative to that is what we have now, where a lot of people are doing what is quote-unquote useless jobs.
Right,
you know?
Yes.
And there is, of course, by one definition, no job is useless. I mean, we all have to work to survive.
Right.
We all need to acquire financial resources to purchase the necessities of life. That's just the world that we live in.
That's the way it's working right now. Yeah.
But on the other hand, like, you know, how many inspectors do you need? You know, that are inspecting like the various, like, you know, meeting the various regulatory demands of society. You know what I mean? And I'm in favor of regulation and you know, as far as that goes on, like environmental, public health level, like you name it. You know, because you have to. There's a quality assurance, quality control that has to happen in the interest of public safety.
Yeah, definitely.
But you know, that sort of feeds into the problem as well. Like, you know, a lot of the things, the items that we use, you know, that we depend on for our health and well-being, say like pharmaceutical drugs. You know, the actors that are involved in producing those substances don't necessarily have your best interest in mind.
No.
You know, what they are still functioning on this sort of win-lose profit mentality, and they externalize the costs. You know, they have people running the numbers, like saying, okay, well, if we know this causes this health condition in 1% of people, like how much are those lawsuits going to cost us to settle?
Right.
You know, versus how much money are we going to make on selling the drug in the first place?
Not mention any names, Johnson & Johnson, but you know, it's But even Pfizer, I mean, they're like, I think we need a fourth and a fifth vaccine shot, but you know, like because it's the most profitable drug right now, and it's like, okay, well, we might, and maybe that's true, and I don't know. But at the same time, you have to like let the information guide the decision making, right? Yeah. Because like, I am a proponent of the vaccines. I think me too. I've gotten 3 of them so far.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah.
You know, they've been developed and advocated for by, you know, virtually every medical professional. In the country. Exactly. In the world. You know, there's definitely dissenting voices, and I don't mean to dismiss those dissenting voices, because I think dissent is important.
Definitely.
But the data should reveal what is true and what is false here, and that goes back to like the process of science itself. Versus, you know, what science sometimes is, and what it is often politicized as. Which is, you know, an arm of, again, power elite, you know, educated structure. You know.
At what point does it stop being necessity, like in public health awareness, and what point does it just become, well, we could just make a few extra dollars right here for everybody if we just, you know, just want to live farther, and it's not going to hurt anybody. It's like, you know, it's like a weird it becomes it comes to a point at some point, I think, you know.
Yes.
And I don't know. I don't know what the solution is to all that. I mean, I do know that the pharmaceutical drugs companies are charging a ghastly amount of money for a gallon of insulin. Like it's like $2,000 or something for a bucket.
Yeah.
You know, like
they're holding people ransom for their own lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's because they're obeying the laws of economics that we have in our society. You know?
And
it's the absolute worst face of capitalism you can imagine.
Yeah, exactly.
Truly.
Because it pays for them to keep us unhealthy, essentially. The more unhealthy we are, the more money they make, and that's a bad business model for people.
Yeah,
it's like it's good business for them, I'm sure, but it's like it's horrible for the people for the suffering that it's causing.
Yes. Or you know, it goes back to the idea about nutrition.
Yeah.
You know, like why is there high fructose corn syrup and everything?
Right. Yeah.
You know, like we don't need everything to be artificially sweetened like this.
No.
You know,
not at all.
Yeah.
It's like peanut butter has a ton of sugar in it, and it doesn't even really make any sense that it does. You know, like I've been buying a lot of peanut butter lately. There's like no sugar, and it's like it tastes better. Like like usually I'm putting it on something with sugar anyway. Like why do I need this to also have sugar in it? It doesn't like unless I'm just eating it straight out of the jar. But like why? I don't know. Yeah, it's just like we're just overcompensating in a lot of ways. A lot of companies just put sugar in stuff because they know it's kind of addictive and people are addicted to it, and it's like. And we just become oversaturated in it. I know about a year ago, coming out of last winter, I started getting like kind of these like weird like flashes of like when I ate too much sugar or something or another. And so I went to a doctor and I found out I was having like these like hypoglycemic like shocks or something like that.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And so I just cut sugar out for a few months and like everything just smoothed out, you know?
Yeah.
I was like, oh God, like this is for real, you know.
Absolutely. That's very fascinating you say that. I actually had a very similar experience. I still don't understand what the cause of it was.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Perhaps it was 2 years ago. It was during 2020.
Yeah.
Right. I all of a sudden developed all the symptoms of like type 2 diabetes.
Oh damn. Yeah.
Like I was like insatiably hungry. I was very thirsty all the time. I started having like paresthesia in the limbs, which is like the feeling of electrical pulses.
Okay.
Like, and it was very uncomfortable, and I was like scared to death that something all of a sudden was wrong with my body. Like, how did I do this? I mean, I wasn't exercising at the time. I was maybe like mildly overweight.
Right.
But I'm like, this doesn't seem right. You know, I'm pretty healthy overall.
Yeah.
So actually, I wound up seeing a few doctors about it, and they tested my blood and everything, A1C, like absolutely not diabetic. Okay. But I did develop all of like these problems like out of the blue.
Yeah.
You know? And the only thing that I could come up with is I just need to take better care of my health, and since I did, you know, I started exercising, eating healthier, cutting sugar out of my diet.
Yeah.
For the most part, that's kind of back in my diet now.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, right.
That's good sometimes.
Yeah.
But I mean, moderation as well is kind of the way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you know, as soon as I did that, all the problems disappeared.
Yeah.
So I have no idea what happened to me, but it was literally all the symptoms of type 2 diabetes, like right down the list. My blood work didn't corroborate that result.
That's good.
Yeah. Right. If anything, I was maybe on the hypoglycemic side.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm not sure again why that would be, but yeah, it was able to get turned around. So
that's cool. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's amazing how things like water and exercise and like, you know, like sunshine and all these things help out, you know, drastically. And like we were talking about before the podcast, as far as like just the way that humans evolved to like not even eat food, you know, like for extended periods of time, you know.
Yes, yeah, like fasting was a pretty natural thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't called fasting. It was called like, I'm really hungry and I need to find food somewhere.
Yeah, it's like, for sure.
Anything that is around, I'm going to eat.
That's it, yeah. diversify that microbiome.
Yeah. Man, and can you imagine, I mean, like a world that didn't have any like factories and like everything was like edible pretty much, you know?
It's almost
like
unimaginable.
Yeah, you could just like drink water straight from a stream, you know?
Maybe.
Right.
No, I mean, intestinal parasites are natural too.
Okay. Yeah, that's probably true too.
There's a little bit of a fallacy in like the natural living world because disease is natural and nature on one level is scary. Yeah. It wants to kill you. Yeah. And it wants to make new things out of your body parts.
Yeah, exactly.
So you gotta watch out.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. That's why technically why we went to great lengths to like try to like make nature safer. We just killed everything in our surroundings just to be like, okay, this is all ours. We're gonna put concrete on it. Nothing's gonna grow. Yes. There's no snakes. There's no shit. Like there's no bear's gonna eat me right now.
It's pretty fair to say the pendulum has swung too far.
Yeah.
Like this hyper sterilization of environment. I mean, it is bad for us in all regards.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And even like I'm in my car box right now, and I'm safe in the box of my car, and it's like that provides like psychological like damage in ways too. I think it's like people had never been like that, or never had like necessarily like a safe space. In that manner of speaking, climate controlled music, like it's such a weird, it's such a weird thing that we do now that we just kind of take for granted, I guess. That, I mean, it kind of eliminates the like socialization factor in ways too. I mean, if you were like on I don't know, but I mean that could be. I mean, I'm just thinking about like being in the woods at night, way back, 2 centuries ago.
Sure.
Like, I mean, there's thieves on the trail and all this. People didn't generally like look at each other like on the trail either.
Yeah. That's not the socialization you want though.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Maybe you like traveling with your friends, with your family, with your fellows.
And that's maybe cool. That's
cool. I mean, you could do that now.
Exactly.
But you kind of have to go out of your way to like make the arrangements.
Right.
And I haven't considered this particular point previously about like the isolation of driving in a motor vehicle, but I mean it is an isolated experience.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. That is another way in which our society is isolated.
Yeah.
And we're certainly profoundly isolated from each other on average.
Yeah.
And it's gotten so much worse with the pandemic.
Definitely.
I mean, certainly many of these measures have been like necessary to prevent like the spread of disease, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But there is like a very severe toll that it's exacted upon us, psychologically speaking.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel really bad for school children.
Yeah.
Definitely. Who have had their social lives and their social development like totally disrupted.
Yeah.
By the course of this pandemic.
Yeah.
Can you imagine like taking online classes at grade 4? Like, I can't pay attention to online classes now, man.
No, I know. No, not at all. It's the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is definitely an entirely different thing, especially like learning type of environments where you like, even just working environments or like any type of space that we kind of set aside for a certain activity, right? Yeah. Where like if I have to work from home, I'm just home. And like I don't go anywhere else to go to work, that it kind of messes with my head, because it's like, oh, well, I'm at home, so I'm just gonna like do home type of things. Mm-hmm. And then you really have to like clamp down and like regiment like your own time and space to work for you. Otherwise it's hard to like get out of the mentality of being either home or at work, kind of thing.
Yes.
And that's, maybe it's because, we've done that in our entire lives in a sense, like where like, it's like, oh, well, we wake up and we go to school and we learn there, and then we come home and then we're home, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And then after that you go to college or you go to work or you go here, but you're constantly leaving to go to a different space to do this specific activity.
Yes.
And it's like we've been training ourselves to do that our entire lives.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to break that.
Absolutely. I feel you on that. Like, I feel definitely this sort of, like, compartmentalization of identity.
Yeah, for sure.
What, and I sort of believe that, we as human beings, we have, like, a continuum of selves that get called into play because of our various social roles.
Yeah.
For instance, there's you as worker, you as, being at home, like you're saying. There's you with your friends. There's you with your family.
Yeah.
Just to name a few. The you as musician.
Yeah.
You as podcaster. These are all different roles that we, like, sort of snap in and out of.
Yeah, definitely.
But if we don't, like, somehow integrate all of those roles into a cohesive network, if they're just rigidly compartmentalized, I find that to be a very unhealthy psychological position to be in.
Yeah. It is weird how it's like almost like when you have friends that meet for the first time from totally different worlds of and you're like, oh shit, like, well, what is happening right now?
Yes.
Yeah, I used to be more like that. I do feel that my internal narrative has shifted more towards a more cohesive, worldview in the last, 10 years or so. Yeah. And that, like, even in terms of, like, like an introvert extrovert kind of idea, right? Yeah. Where, like, I used to think about that as an actual thing, but I don't know. Like, at least for myself, I don't think that it exists in the sense that there are times when I'm alone too long and I need to see people, and there's times when I'm around people too much and I need to be alone. Yes. And there's that balance. Yeah. But I don't necessarily ever feel like I want to be one place or the other because that's where I more naturally am, I guess.
Yeah. Right. Rather than approaching it as some sort of absolute characteristic.
Right.
It's more like a function of your state and your recent experiences.
Yeah.
Because I've definitely, I agree with you 100%. I experienced something very similar. There are plenty of social situations where I'm just, like, charged up. Yeah. And, like, just, like, loving life. There's plenty of social instances that I find extremely draining. Yeah. And you really do need recoup time after that.
Definitely.
And just the same, like, too much time in your apartment can make you a little crazy.
Right. Yeah.
A little nuts.
Exactly. It's like even thinking about, like, a caveman being in a cave for a long time. Yeah. It doesn't even make any sense, Like, why are you in your cave and the sun's outside, dude? Like, why aren't you outside when the sun's outside? Yes. Like, we're just made to do that. We're like creatures of the earth, and we're like, we are nature ourselves, like,
yes, and we are nature, we are life.
Yeah. And to fight against that is just, it's gonna hurt us. It's gonna be detrimental. Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of the tension there comes from, like, how we've come to think of ourselves as machines or living in a machine world.
Right.
Even a lot of, like, the language that we use to talk about our bodies is very object oriented. Yeah. And it doesn't say, it doesn't give credence to the fact that we're a whole organism. Yeah. And this is, like, our physical bodies are part of ourselves, right? We often say we have a body, rather than we are a body. Right. And that goes back to, like, a very deep, like, psychological schism and conception that we've had. I mean, I think as a function of, the religious traditions that we've been brought up with. Yeah. But I think the more we can think of ourselves as a cohesive whole, the better off that we are. We're not just living in some sort of mechanical universe, like, where things just happen and it's nonsense. We're part of this world. We're from this world.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think that can't be said enough. And just even in terms of, like let's say propaganda or religious-based speak, right? Like, a lot of that's predicated on the fact that it's like, well, if I say this enough, more people will believe it. But if we keep saying things that are good for you more, people will believe that, right? Like, so from this, whatever the opposite of religious or propaganda speak would be, and even within religious contexts and propaganda can be good ideas, right?
Of course, yeah.
And so essentially it just is that. I mean, like anything that we're saying out loud is essentially just like what we're promoting, I guess. Or you know, it's like, okay, humans, like, gather around. This is what we should be doing more of right now because of the sun in the sky. God told me from the sun. God told me this, and you know, I don't know, but like,
yeah, the rationale might be fuzzy, but maybe the idea is good,
right?
You know,
yeah.
And then, you know, I think this is how a lot of our belief systems became codified in the first place,
right?
You know, because you think there's a correlation, but and therefore like a causation between like multiple events. Like, how did human sacrifice?
Right.
To appease the sun,
I know,
become a thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And this, I mean, this wasn't just like, you know, Mesoamerican cultures that were practicing this. There were all sorts of, you know, similar rites practiced throughout pagan Europe, and I'm not familiar with, like, you know,
well, even
similar rites in the Far East or anything.
Burning witches, or you know, or even like the Crusades or anything where they're just going around killing people because of just random ideas in their heads that like are just obviously not true now. Like it's like it is really weird, but it makes complete sense though, because we are very like tribal type of creatures, and we all want to like kind of be within the community and be within the culture, because we don't want to be excommunicated out, you know. Because when you're left behind from the group, then you have to fend for yourself. And even if you try to find another group, at least back in the day, it's like, well, why are you out here on your own? It's like, oh, I got chased by a lion, and now, you know, like, and can I join your group? And it's like, oh, I don't think so, man. You know, like,
I mean, maybe it would work, you know.
Right.
Like, well, what can you do?
Yeah.
Like, are you a good hunter?
Yeah.
You know, do you got a weird face?
Yeah. We like the jib of your character.
Prime jib, my man.
Yeah, and it's like, whew, I got into this group. It really is, man. Sure. Yeah. A lot of it. A lot of just the world. It's so weird.
Definitely.
But we still do it. I mean, we're still here, like, it's like, oh, you like back in the 80s, you building electric cars, you're a weirdo, you know. And it's like, yeah, but like, you know, gasoline's like not good. It's like, well, yeah, but that's what we do. We're gasoline people, so if you want to be in with the group, like, electric cars are weird, so, you know, sorry.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, talking about like tradition.
Yeah.
Yes, right. So yeah, tradition forming all sorts of different, you know, bizarre relationships, or, you know, feeding this idea of tribalism.
Yeah.
You know, like, this is our tribe. We do things this way.
Yeah.
You know, and you can see it play out in like really like superficial ways, like people in their sports teams.
Yeah, that's true. I mean? Yeah.
That's a like a really kind of a manifestation of tribalism.
Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
It's like appealing to that same sort of psychological layer. And I don't. That's not to knock for anybody for being. I think it's actually like a fun and relatively harmless way.
Oh yeah.
To express that layer of humanity.
I love going to games. I love going to a sporting event of any kind, mostly. You know.
It's usually like, I mean, if you get into it, there's a nice energy. Like, back when LeBron was still in Cleveland for the Cavs, I got way on the bandwagon. I was like, this is dumb. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I was all about it. Man.
And even drugs, to the extent it's like alcohol is so pervasive in America that if you quit alcohol and like everyone's used to you drinking, it's like
you can lose a lot of friends.
Yeah,
and often you do.
Yeah,
because if you're not going to the bar, you don't see those people anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so that's hard to get out of that cycle.
It is. Yeah.
Or if you smoke and you're around all of your friends, you just go over to their houses all the time and smoke or something like that. Or
right.
Tons of instances of that, I'm sure, throughout history. Like you know, like I don't know if it's weird. Like, I mean, the way our relationship with drugs now, not to get off on a tangent or anything, but like,
go ahead,
it's very. Like, I'm sure back in the day, people didn't think necessarily that drugs were good or bad, I would say. It was just that, like, they were probably so hard to come by that you couldn't have ever abuse them to the point, like where you'd actually be addicted to them or anything either, though.
Possibly.
Because I mean, even like cocaine usage in like early South American tribes and things, like where they're just rolling up the leaves and putting them in their lip, and then it's like giving them a little jolt like a cup of coffee would.
Sure, yeah.
It's like no one thought that was bad, It's like
it's really useful as a medicine, actually.
Yeah.
It's great for altitude sickness.
Yeah. Okay.
Great for an upset stomach.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah, but certainly it's changing the form, refining it. It gives the substance a different character. It gives it different potency.
Yeah.
And that's not even to say that you wouldn't be able to use it responsibly.
Right.
But as a function of the black market and social taboos.
Yeah.
When people get into that, and it does have addictive characteristics.
Yeah.
People tend to go way overboard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so there's all sorts of stigma that gets whipped up. Not to mention that I don't necessarily agree with the fact that people didn't think that there was anything wrong with drug abuse in the past.
Yeah.
Or drug use, I should say. Drug use, period.
Yeah.
And, that's, again, going back to, ideas of, puritanical society.
I was going to say,
intoxication has been frowned upon, again, like this in America.
Yeah.
Usually in a religious context. I mean, drinking was seen as, socially degenerate in a lot of circles.
Prohibition era, you know?
The temperance movement, exactly,
Yeah, can you imagine, someone trying to make illegal at the federal government level right now?
Alcohol?
Yeah. That's...
well, that's kind of where we're at with marijuana.
Yeah, yeah.
It really is where we're at with marijuana.
Exactly.
Yeah. And there's the same sort of prohibition era arguments that are being used to keep it illegal. And what I sort of see is that with anything there's the possibility for abuse, right?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, marijuana isn't addictive in the physical sense, especially not something like heroin is.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But at the same time, if you're always high.
Yeah.
And you're not contributing anything to society. Well, maybe that is a harm.
Well, even if you are contributing to society and you are always high, it's difficult to stop. It's difficult to because I've known people that just smoke every day, just as kind of that's what they do. They wake up, they smoke, and then they go about their day, and they're productive. But it's then they get to a point where they're just what is it to not be stoned anymore, and they don't know exactly how to function without it at some point. I mean, that's the other side of that, I think, because I don't know, when I used to smoke in the middle of the day every once in a while, I haven't smoked every day for 20 years. So I haven't been in that, but I'll smoke once a week right now,
Sure.
And it's I use it for reflection mostly, and just I don't know, sometimes it has a creative bug, or if I'm tired at night or something like that, it'll wake me up and put me in a spot.
Sure.
But it's but I don't know, it's there isn't anything wrong with it, and people can become increasingly more productive on it, I would say, in a lot of cases too.
Certainly, depending on the individual, their habituated pattern of usage.
Yeah.
And I definitely am on the side of as a free thinking adult, you should have full agency over the substances that you choose to ingest into your body.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that just makes perfect sense to me. Why would you?
Yeah, for sure.
Why would you bring criminal charges against or imprison somebody for doing something like that of their own free will? Yeah,
I mean, if somebody's taking so much Tylenol that it's destroying their liver, it's why are you doing that, man? That sounds like a mental affliction or something, and we need to take care of this person, or something.
Sure.
Or any if everything was legal, right? And you're abusing things to the point that you're physically hurting yourself, then it's a medical a case. You need to go to the doctor. You need to be fixed. You need to
Right. Well, I think about even my own experiences in college because of like the socialization around like college students, like getting together and partying. Right. I drank way too much.
Right.
Like way too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
But everybody around me was doing that.
Right. Yeah.
And
exactly.
I was having a lot of fun. Thankfully, I never really seriously hurt myself, but I could have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Easily could have.
Definitely.
And I think part of the drug abuse equation that's not talked about enough is just the socialization that we have around different substances.
Right.
And if we were socialized in such a way that this isn't really that big of a deal.
Right.
It's not. Yeah. It's not the key to the kingdom. It's not going to make you have a great time. It's not beer fest every time you start drinking.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm sure you could think this too. There's plenty of times I became severely intoxicated and I had a bad time.
Right.
It's like, why did I even just do this?
Yeah.
Was I chasing some sort of like destination in my psychic map of reality?
Yeah.
On an unconscious level, I would say probably so.
Yeah, because you get to a point you're like, oh man, that beer made me feel even better. What's the next beer gonna do?
Sure.
And then you lose track of counting how many beers.
Yeah.
But I think that's completely correct though. Like in society, like over in Europe, it's not a big deal,
Yeah.
And they drink differently than we do.
Yeah.
And it's and I think that people would point to it, and it's hard to point to because it's like it's so minute of a change. Like what the age of drinking is essentially, and like when you put the age at 21. It's really weird because it's like there's adults that can't drink now, and why?
Yeah.
We just don't trust those adults to drink, essentially.
Right. Yeah.
But it makes those adults drink a lot more because when they can drink, they're like, "Oh, I found some. We got some." Like, like this is super cool now or whatever. Like people go off the deep end with it, and that's the exact opposite thing than what we want to happen.
Yeah, right.
So it's like a detrimental law that
Well, you gotta go back to like what is the age at which somebody can make responsible decisions for themselves?
Right.
And honestly, there's plenty of 21, 22-year-olds. I'd say most of them probably cannot make responsible decisions for themselves.
Not any better than they were when they were 18.
And that actually is a huge problem right there in and of itself. And I have no idea what the decision for the remedy for that situation is.
Right. Yeah.
But certainly
the coming of age stories, man.
It's sort of a moot point. Do we raise the age of autonomy to like 25?
Right.
When your brain stops allegedly forming?
You're not even allowed to join the military until 25, right?
Yeah,
or something
that would be insane. First of all, that'd be very interesting for the military.
Yeah, I
know. maybe we wouldn't be delivering freedom via airmail so often.
It's like, man, how many people are signed up anymore? It's like their brains are fully developed and they don't want to step in front of a bullet right now.
Yeah, you'd still have some people signing up. I'm
sorry. Definitely, yeah.
But then there's a horrible bankrupting of autonomy. What if you're unable to escape from abusive parents?
Right. Yeah. True.
Until you're that old. And that'd be horrifying.
Yeah.
That'd be horrifying. And there's so many conflating factors here. So I'm in favor of more autonomy, not less.
Right. Yeah.
But at the same time, what do we do to ensure that people are making good decisions for themselves?
Yeah. And what it's that's a whole other can of worms, like when we're talking about how do we educate kids at all, are we educating people to be a self-actualizing or autonomous people in and of themselves, or are we just teaching them to observe authority and to obey and to follow? And that's a huge problem too, because if people can't make their own decisions, then there really isn't an age, that you can really trust them. It's just that some people make it a point to find their own self identity and to try to go their own way.
Yeah.
Oh, and then there's people who just don't, at some point, and then they just follow whatever the script is in our culture almost, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, this is just what we do here, you know? Like, I graduated here, and then I go here, and I go to work, and then I retire here, and whatever, you know? And it's like, for that, I mean, that works, you know, in some manner
and if
of
it
respect.
Works for you, if it works for you, great.
Yeah.
But it's certainly not a one-size-fits-all prescription.
No.
You know? Like, definitely, the way it seems to me the educational system is run is like a factory.
Yeah.
Like so many things, it's mass production.
Yeah.
But you can't mass produce human beings.
No.
You know, and in fact, like, we resist it every step of the way.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, like, do you remember how easy it was for you to get hammered into shape?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, man, it was a great time, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, they had to take me out in the hall and be like, "Why are you talking in class?" It's like, I don't know, because like there's other people like
I wanted to express something.
Yeah. You're not allowed to do that. Why? Because it's class. It's like,
class.
Well. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
well,
sure.
I had another idea though. It's like, well, ideas aren't what we do here. All right, we tell you what the ideas are and what they aren't.
Yeah.
And that's really hard to come to terms with, you know? Or even in like what is it that I want to, like, by the time I'm like in 5th grade, or at least in my own experience, when I was in 5th grade, I was reading video game magazines, not because I was interested in video games, because I was interested in how they were programming these, or like what the technology was, or I'm like learning about this idea, this word called anti-aliasing, and I'm like, what does that mean? What are polygons? Like, you know, like how do they all, like, how are they functioning? And that whole, like, you know, 3D mapping.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that was really cool to me, but like there wasn't anything to study about that in school.
Well, if
you know?
If you had a conversation with a teacher, be like, "Oh, you like that? Well, enjoy algebra."
Right? Yeah.
You know
Exactly.
What I mean? It's like, okay, like I get how that feeds in, but like, kind of not really.
It's not a direct correlation, though. I mean, when you're in algebra class or geometry or whatever, like you aren't learning how this is related at all. You know.
Sure.
Or why it will ever relate, or like, I mean, I'm still not really, I'm still super foggy on how that relates right now, you know, like, and like I know that they do, but like it's like I don't know how to actually get from point A to point B on it, you know.
Sure. Yeah.
I learned a little bit in programming websites a couple of years ago, but like I don't know, like, and I understand now that programming in C is how you would do that. But I don't, you know, it's like, you know, like I'm at first base, you know. But
at least you're in the ballpark.
Right, yeah, that's true. I'm playing the game, you know, like I'm not in the stands. But like, but do I even, like, I'm almost 40. Do I even have enough time, or do I even want to get to the point where I figure it out, you know? Yeah. It's like, I got to make that call now, otherwise I'm just not going to do it, essentially.
Yeah, well, you know, that comes back to our limitation, you know?
Yeah.
Like, we all have limited attention, limited time, limited energy. You have to get really real, I feel like, especially, you know, like, you and I, we're sort of, like, approaching, like, middle age.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, what is our will for our life? And you have to get really clear on that. Because, you know, there's definitely a time to just be kind of floating and like assimilate as much information as possible.
For sure.
But at some point you have to say, what is my life about? What am I going to do with it?
Yeah.
That's why I think people have fucking meltdowns at 40.
That's true. Yeah.
Or they fulfilled like the template, you know, the program. You know, they did this, went to school and got the job, got the degree, got the job.
Yeah.
And they turned 40 and like, oh my god, my life is a lie. I'm an automaton. You know what I mean?
All the fives, man. At like 30, at 35, at 40, even 25. Like, you always have these, like, epiphanies, like, oh, man, I'm almost on the other side of this.
Almost.
You know, on the other side of this, you know, 10. On the other side of this 10, you know?
Maybe you could flip and be like, oh, shit, this is happening.
Right.
Like, every minute of every day.
Yeah.
35,
really
what's that?
Yeah,
That's a number.
It's so weird. Yeah, it's like, wait a minute. Sure. Like, why aren't we on 12s?
We could be. Yeah, man.
Exactly. 42 is the new 40, man. But
Yeah.
Or 44. I don't know. Whatever it is.
Like 42. Let's go with 42.
Yeah, right. Because I know when I was 35, I was like, I'm going to write a novel right now. That's all I want to do. I'm going to move to South America. I'm just going to bunker down for 3 months and write this crazy novel right now,
Yeah.
And but I ended up knowing somebody up in Massachusetts who gave me a spot to stay for free, or other than like I worked for him, doing like odd jobs here and there for like 3 or 4 months, and just that was perfect though, because I was away from everybody and all of my old routines, and I was just able to like focus on a thing and really figure out what that is, just figuring out how to work when you don't have any distractions necessarily on exactly what you want to work on.
Yeah, it's an inner mode of hyper-focus.
Right, yeah. Because you only have like so much time to do this like large project, and you want to finish it, and
I didn't even know you wrote a novel. Did you finish it?
Yeah, well, I wrote the first draft and like half of the second draft. Nice. The second draft was like, by the time I got to September, because like I wrote it from like January to I don't know, May, I guess, that year in 2019, and then I worked on the second draft all summer when I came back to Ohio, but then by about September my whole life gets turned upside down by the festival that I run, and so I was just like, shit, I gotta drop this, because there's no way I'm gonna be able to keep my mind, because that novel, the way that I wrote it, the way that it just became this huge, like, it was sci-fi, and I'm constructing all these different, like, I'm like, okay, here are like the 5 sci-fi ideas that I'm putting in here. Here's how they're interrelated. Here's how they're gonna affect each other, through this whole book.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Yeah, it was really kind of a mindfuck, and try to like every part became so intricate that like I don't remember the part that I did before because I'm here now,
Yeah.
And to try to keep the whole book in your head at the same time became maybe too much. Mm-hmm. And I've never tried to write a book before to that extent, And
well, but you gave it a shot, man.
Yeah, it was like, wild.
This is sort of how I feel about like creative works in general. Like sometimes it just runs away from you.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
For sure.
And I feel like for me personally, I have like no shame about just like scrapping something.
Yeah,
Yeah. But then again, maybe you could like dig into it and use it, in some other form. Like maybe it'll get like reborn in some other way.
Yeah, for sure.
As if you've never tried to write a book before, like, is it a reasonable expectation to imagine that you'd succeed on the first time?
Right, exactly.
Like, what happens when you try to write 10 books?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, like, how do I find the resources to do that, though? You know what
I mean? Like,
all of it, I don't know. But it's out there and it's possible.
Prosperity grind set.
Yeah, right. It's real, man. It's definitely real. Sure. But I did write a short script that same summer. I got back to Ohio and wrote like a short script to a movie, and we ended up filming that at the end of that year. Yeah. So that became kind of like, once I wrote the whole novel, writing a script was like, this is going to be easy. All I need to do is write 5 pages. Like, I can do that in a day, Like, And so I wrote like 5 drafts of that. I was rewriting the drafts on the way to the shoot, I'm like, okay, I'm like trying to memorize lines. I'm like, I've never acted in anything before. Nice. Never been in a play, so I was like freaking out, and I'm at the coffee shop like rewriting and scratching things out on the way, and it turned out decent. Awesome. I think I'm going to release it this spring.
Cool.
Finally, right? Yeah. But like, working on more things in the meantime. Mm-hmm. But I think it all correlates. It's all something that you do. Anything that you do that puts you outside of yourself gives you the confidence, I guess, to try other things.
It's all efficacy building.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, do you remember what it was like the first week you played guitar?
Jesus, yeah.
Yeah, it sucked, didn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I remember, like, all my hopes and dreams were immediately shattered. I'm like, this is so hard, It
is, yeah.
But you just kind of have to plug away at it, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you really do, like, build a skill. Like, I try to bring that moment into awareness, like, whenever I feel like I can't learn how to do something, because I'm like, look, I'm not the greatest guitarist on earth, but I'm way better than I was back then, man.
Yeah,
it's
for sure.
0 to 1,000,000. You know what I mean? In relative terms.
Definitely.
And it's like, if I remember learning how to do that, it's just what it is. It's about, you just have to put aside your ego enough to start.
Yeah.
And to start trying shit and to assimilate the information. Because you can learn. Yeah. You really can.
And really, like, what is success at the end of the day? You know? Yeah. Like, is success me just being able to do this for my own sanity? Because, like, I have this thing in me that I want to do, you know? Yeah. Regardless of whatever I define as success later, that's a whole different thing, too.
Yes.
Because just me, you know, I don't know. Like, I remember my grandma always tells me stories of her father played guitar and, like, harmonica, piano, and all these things, and but all he really did was just run around town and had a good time, you know, and like never.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, but it's like he's still like the legend who used to do all these, you know, play all these instruments and like.
Did he have a cool name like Smokey Jim?
I think it was Hawk. His name was Hawk.
Yes. That's great. Are you kidding me?
Glenn Hawk or Glenn, I don't know, something around there. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Awesome.
Yeah.
See, that's success.
Right.
If you earn a badass nickname,
right.
Like you walk into the club and like, oh, there's Hawk. He's about to kill it on the harmonica.
Guy
like,
soars, man.
Like,
above
boom,
the clouds.
dude. Yeah, you know. That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yeah. I forget what we were talking about before now. But
Hawk.
Yeah, my great grandpa, a musician, he was crazy. He used to sing Ida Red, so I covered that once too.
Nice. Is that where you take your eponym from?
Not actually.
It
was a different thing, but it is my grandma BB's dad, and his guitar got lost somewhere along the lines, but. I ended up taking that name from just playing washboard in the bands over in Kent there.
With Johnny and the Apple Stompers?
Johnny and the Apple Stompers, man. Yo.
Solid band.
It was fun. I started calling Johnny Grandpa Johnny one day.
Yeah.
And so then he started calling me Great Grandpa BB because I was older than him, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Or whatever.
Okay.
And then so... then us and the Rambunctious Bunch, we moved into that house on Earl Avenue, and Earl is my great grandpa BB's name.
Nice.
And Johnny would come over, and that was kind of like the jam spot for a while, for that summer, I don't know. And so he called me great grandpa BB like while I was living in that house a bunch. And then it was really weird. Like we had a combination band between the Apple Stompers and Rambunctious Bunch. Yeah. I feel like it had a name too. Maybe we were just calling it the Catfish Bob Band at that point. I'm not sure. But like it was like a combo band.
Yeah. And
really, really cool stuff was happening, even though nobody took it seriously at all, you know? It was like Johnny, Bob, Amy, who? Oh, goddamn. Doc was in the band.
Doc was in the band?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And couple, I can't believe I'm not remembering names right now. Klimp, I think, was in it. And also the violin player, Corey, right? He's with Tebbs now in his own band.
Ooh.
Corey Grinder. That's his name.
Okay.
But he was also in the band. Anyway, I was playing like the Bangity Clank drum station with the washboard one day, and I was just like, oh, I'm tired of being the washboard player. I want to play my own music and write songs, you know? So it was really, I remember the day because like I went upstairs to my room and I wrote a song on guitar, or at least a riff, you know? And I was like, this is awesome. I love this riff, you know? And then I went downstairs and I was all excited about it. And they're like, hey, we just wrote this amazing song. I'm like, I just wrote this amazing song, you know? And that's where I felt like the split happened, you know? Or like,
gotcha. Yeah.
I started just recording that album at that point. And, you know, like I would still be in the band and stuff until we all moved out of the house and I ended up moving to Norwalk. But it was definitely like, and then I had all of those people like guested on the album. You guested on the album.
Yeah.
A bunch of people in Norwalk.
Cool trip to Detroit, man.
Yeah, hell yeah. Yeah, that was rad.
For sure.
And so I was either gonna call that album Evil BB or Great Grandpa BB. That's where I was like, okay, you know.
You embraced it. That's good.
Yeah, it was weird for me, but also it just felt like it was the right time and place, and like I was getting in with the whole acoustic group in Norwalk at that time when I moved back, and I was like, hey, acoustic folk people, like you might like some of my new stuff. It's kind of folk like, you know, or whatever. So we all ended up collaborating on an album together, and some of those songs, that same song ended up being on that album.
Nice.
Yeah. So that was kind of like my signature Grandpa BB song, the Chug Kaboom song it was called. Kind of about oil and all of that, in a matter of speaking. I was told that was what it was about, and I could see what their point, you know. But to me, it was just like abstract, just trying to make it as cool and weird sounding as possible, you know.
Sure, yeah. Well, you know, it's always interesting to hear what other people hear in songs that you write.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, I've had a lot of people point out, I shouldn't say a lot.
Right, yeah, yeah.
Who listen to my music? But I've definitely had people who've listened to my stuff, like, say, like, point this out, or, like, really like a song that I wasn't crazy about. I'm like, it's so interesting that you hear it that way.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
I'm always reminded of this phrase, like, you know, trust the tale, not the teller. And it's sort of this idea that you, like, embrace the multi-dimensional meaning of a song. You know, 'cause it might mean a thing to you, but, like, whatever the listener hears, it's kind of what the song's about.
Oh, for sure.
You know, even if they go back later and they realize, it doesn't make sense. In that moment, it had that meaning.
Definitely.
You know?
And then even if they listen to it, you know, 10 years in advance, like whoever they are now, it's going to mean something different at that point, you know?
Right.
And that's just a sign of a good song, because songs are going to be abstract in certain ways, I think, you know?
Yeah. For sure.
You can't, I mean, if you just start telling people exactly what you're trying to say, it's not really a song anymore.
No, you just kind of got to let it be.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why I'm really drawn to Tom Waits. Because there's so many stories that you can, like, pick out from his tunes.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, I mean, like, there's definitely, in a lot of them, there's a very clear narrative.
Yeah.
But, I mean, in some of them, there really isn't. You know?
Yeah.
It's just like,
for sure.
It's like and here's the atmosphere, and you can make whatever story you want out of it.
Yeah.
You know, because there's just so much happening. There's just a texture. You know, there's a general mood.
Right.
But, like, then you just kind of run with it as a listener.
I just introduced Tom Waits to a guy. I think he's like in his late 50s, but I met him in Winston-Salem there yesterday. Yeah, and we're just like trading bands back and forth. And he's like, "Oh, do you know?" I was like, "Do you know Tom Waits?" He's like, "No, who's that?" I'm like, "What are you?" Oh man, yeah, that was you
that's awesome. That's a great thing.
Yeah,
like
definitely.
you even introduced me to Tom Waits, man.
Oh no shit!
Because you gave me "Bad As Me" on a burnt CD.
Oh cool! Hell yeah!
Yeah. I'm like I heard him before, but I was like, I don't get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then I heard that one. I'm like,
yeah.
Scooby-Doo flavored Mephistopheles. You know, and I was in, dude.
Yeah,
I was like,
yes. Dude, yeah, like what you can't just hear one of his songs and know who he is. You know, he's not that kind of guy. You know.
Yeah.
And if you hear one of his songs in a mood that doesn't strike you, you're just gonna hate him. You know, essentially, you're like, this, I don't know what this is. This is not good. You know, or whatever. But yeah, you kind of have to have an open mind, or listen to a lot of what he's doing, and you see like a whole picture start evolving. You know.
Right.
The first song I ever heard of his was off of Bone Machine. It was in the movie Fight Club. Yeah. And it was like in the scene where they all go down to the basement of Lou's Tavern for the first time, and they're starting the Fight Club, right? And it was like dun 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 dun.
Yeah,
I'm like, this is bad. This is cool, you know, like. And so I like bought the soundtrack, and it wasn't on there, you know. And this was back in like the late '90s, and there wasn't like really like an internet community that's, you know, like big. And I'm like at Sam Goody record store, you know, and like I'm like, how do I find this song, you know? And like couldn't find it for years. I couldn't find it. until a girlfriend at the time, years later, was like, hey, you know who Tom Waits is? I'm like, no, I think I've heard of him, whatever. So I went to the record store, bought a random album, you know, it happened to be Bone Machine, and like the whole album.
Luck, dude.
Yeah. I'm just like, I listened to the whole album, I'm like, this is weird, this is kind of cool, this is, and then it got to that song, I'm like, oh my god, this is the song, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
I had been searching for it for years at that point.
What is he even yelling in that tune?
Going out west. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Going out west where the wind blows. Oh. I'm like, oh my god.
What a badass. Yeah, for sure.
And then I covered that song for years after that too, because it's just a great tune.
It is, man.
Yeah.
That's a great record. Earth Died Screaming is my jam.
Oh my god, hell yeah. Well, Earth Died Screaming. It's like gospel or something, you know? It's like, it's on a whole different level.
Yeah, for sure.
Murder in the Red Barn is just creepy and like real. Yeah. It's so real, you know?
Yeah. Is Come On Up to the House on that one?
Maybe.
Yeah. That's either on that one or Mule Variations, I think.
Yeah.
For sure. I've been like spinning like those three like most heavily. It's like Mule Variations, Bad As Me, and Bone Machine.
Cool. Yeah.
Those are
so great.
Those are hitting it every time.
Yeah. I'd put in Rain Dogs with those too, but yeah, like those are like his after his like change, and it was in 1983.
Yeah.
With Swordfish Trombone, from when he went to like the classic nightclub like scat man like piano player guy into becoming just like the weird like folk like rock and roll like just anything that's just almost like the way that he structured his albums after that was very like this is insane, this is more what I think is normal, this is insane, this is normal. All throughout his albums, that's what he does ever since the 80s, you know? Like, and that's how he kind of gets away with it, too.
For sure.
Because his kind of normal stuff is so smooth that it makes you just, like, kind of mellow out and be like, okay, good, you know? Like,
I didn't even pick up on that detail, but, like, you're right. That is what he's doing.
Yeah.
He's, like, bringing you back home, and then he's pushing your sensibilities.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the only way he can get away with that. Like, when you have guys like Zappa and Captain Beefheart or, you know, any of these, like, really avant-garde guys, you know, like, they're just balls to the wall all the time. It's a lot to take, you know?
Yes.
And a friend of mine used to talk about Beefheart as being like a palate cleanser, right? Where, like, you're listening to a lot of different music and you just need to, like, forget about that old music you were listening to and just cleanse the palate, put on some Captain Beefheart, and it just kind of like scrambles your brain, you know, to the point where like, I don't know what music is anymore, you know, and then you're and then you're ready to listen to something else at that point.
Yes.
I always like that kind of depiction, I guess.
Yeah, no doubt.
But he does that in real time on one album now.
Yeah.
Where he'll scramble you and then he'll put you back in a good spot and then scramble you again, and it's like it's
for sure.
Yeah.
It's the master of work, man.
Yeah, it really is. It really he went so far with music that he just like transcended the entire medium, and nobody else does anything close to what he does.
Yeah.
You know.
Right. Do you know if he's still working on any music?
I don't, because Bad As Me came out in like 11, I think, and that was
11 or 12.
Yeah, like 10 years ago now.
Yeah, well,
and
he's pretty old nowadays.
I know, like he's in his 70s, and he didn't even tour on that last album. I know, and which I've never got to see him live, which is a bummer. I mean, the problem now is that he can't play small clubs anymore too, because it's like. It's just going to be so pandemonium.
It'll be slam jammed.
It's like that's what happened to the Beatles, where they just became so big that like they couldn't tour anymore, and they just became a studio band at that point.
Yeah,
which is cool in its own right, because they were able to like create these like musical inventions at that point.
Yeah, now that's their focus.
Yeah. Whereas like I think they toured solo and things like that, but Yeah, music's weird like that, where they, if you get to the point where you're that popular, like, you can't even tour anymore. Like, it's just impossible to, like...
I feel like that's such a rare problem for artists nowadays.
Yeah, like...
That's a very rare problem.
Who is at that level right now?
I think most people are, like, even, like, touring bands are, like, barely surviving.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially after the past 2 years.
Yeah.
I've heard some like crazy shit about how little, like even like mid-level touring bands, they were playing like 200-person rooms.
Yeah.
Like they're doing that 5 nights a week, and they're just barely making enough.
Yeah, I bet.
To like feed themselves.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, that's so depressing.
Yeah, it's such a hard art form to make any money on. It's amazing how much like. It's amazing that they're able to sell synthesizers for like $4,000 sometimes. Like if you're buying like a sequential like Prophet 5 Rev 4, like that's like $4,400.
Well, they know their market, and they know that if you love the sound, that's the thing that makes the sound.
Yeah, it is.
It's why the same thing with people that buy a custom Gibson Les Paul. Right. If you're buying a custom shop, you're paying $5,000.
Yeah.
For probably the greatest guitar you can ever possibly play.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you just paid $5,000 to maybe play to a group of 50 people if you're lucky.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't feel like anybody who's playing those instruments are probably going to be any good unless you buy that as like a studio instrument, just to like, and everybody who's coming in is like, oh my god, I've never played one of these, and then plays it, and they're already good. But if you're just buying it for yourself, I mean, chances are you're probably just a lawyer who's like a hobbyist or something like Could that. Be. Like, yeah. I'm going to buy a $13,000 Yamaha CS80 from the 70s right now or something.
A synth lawyer.
Yeah,
like a subspecies of blues lawyer.
Yeah, for real.
Hey, man, that's what we got to do. We got to start our own law firm.
That's exactly just to pay for our synth addiction. Really, like that's
we're synth lawyers, dude.
Thought crossed my mind. Don't think it hasn't.
We got it all wrong, BB.
Yo, but the other side of that coin, though, man, is an idea that I learned from a Clutch song. Yeah. Where the guy was like, once they steal your rock and roll, you'll never get it back, or something along those lines, where Neil Fallon's talking real heavy, and like, I get that on the level of like, man, if you quit playing music for 10 years, like that, you're not gonna get back to who you were as a musician at that point, Like I have seen people do it to the extent that they became very good musicians, but it felt like they weren't seeking anymore. They were just very focused on one type of music, and they're like, yeah, exactly.
Interesting point you bring up about the seeking, because I feel like that is where you kind of have to be with it.
Yeah. You
have to be constantly like seeking to express like what you're feeling and to explore the sound and to create something that's good, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
You know? That's,
or just to inspire something new.
Or just to inspire, yeah. Because I have often the impression that if I were ever to like stop playing guitar, part of my spirit would just die.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
For sure.
I imagine it would be really hard to get back.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've gone through periods where I've like not played for like say 6 months at a time. Mm-hmm. That feels bad.
Yeah,
it doesn't feel good.
No.
Yeah, would not recommend.
During the COVID of 2020, from about March until November, I really only played guitar like once or twice in that entire period.
Yeah.
And that was so weird because like I had just gone 10 years of just non-stop going, And but it felt really, really great, and I knew that I would be back, at some point.
Yeah.
But I really appreciated that time period of just not playing, too. Mm-hmm. Just because I was just like every night I was going to a show, or like every weekend I was somewhere playing or something.
Yeah, there's just a sort of a saturation point.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't realize how much that I was at that point, where I was just like almost begrudgingly like, oh god, this is like it was like a function of myself that I just had to do it anymore.
Yeah.
But that break was monumental to me and just being able to like do something completely different. I just coded all summer in Bitcoin mined. Like I was like, oh, I'm just gonna become like my fifth grade old self and just get back into computers, you know, like.
Nice. Cool, man.
It was really great, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then by November, me and my girl at that time had broken up, and I was like, oh, this is a perfect time to like invent synthwave music, and I didn't have any synthesizers, so I was just like, it was really weird. It was like
all computer sounds.
It wasn't any computer sounds.
Oh.
Yeah, but like in my mind, that's what I wanted to do, right?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so like mainly I was just kind of learning how to play drums, or I was learning how I learned how to play drums or something, right?
So it was just a lot of boom, bah, boom.
Well,
like,
I had
synthwave like that, like with like a really lo-fi drum sound. Or is that what
I was going like with the drums, like my drum patterns. I was more going towards either like a like how like the psychedelic garage movements of like you know King Gizzard or like the OCs or Seagull. You know, like that was like in my head. That's what I was playing drums for.
Nice.
You know,
cool.
And or at least that's what I was trying to play drums for the year before that, right?
Yeah.
And then by that November, I was trying to play drums, and I was just trying to figure out how I write drum parts, you know? Because the year before, I was like creating all this like acid rock, you know, where like basically like the drum parts didn't really have any rhyme or reason where they stopped and started. But I was just like, oh, and I played this beat here, and this is, oh, now I'm playing this, you know? And it's like, and then whatever music I played over top of that is what it was, you know? Which was a lot of fun, you know?
Hell yeah, man.
But but then like how do you structure that? And that's what I tried to do that November, was like I don't even know how I structured things if I was to be a drummer, you know? And so like I started off the same way where I just like acid rocked it for about a month until like, because that whole winter then I was writing like up to 4 songs a week, like where I was like it was really weird.
That's great. What productivity, man.
Right.
That's insane, actually.
Yeah, because like I would limit myself to that day where I would only write and you know record anything within that day structure, and then I would just move on to the next day.
Cool.
And I was pulling from anything a lot. Sometimes I would pull from the guitar part, sometimes from a drum part. Sometimes I was like teaching a piano lesson, and I was like, I'll come across something really cool. And you know, just anywhere that I could pull anything from. Sometimes I was like, I would just try to not listen to music all day, and then I accidentally listened to NPR on the way to the studio, and I would like, there was like Celtic music was playing, and I was oh, I could do this, you know, this is like, I'm all about this right now, you know. And then I did like 3 versions of this like, you know, bouncing, you know, F minor blues pentatonic thing, you know. Yeah. And just like a bunch of toms in a bouncy kind of a pattern that would be Celtic like or whatever.
Like just copping the vibe.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
And ended up using that for some of the soundtrack for that short film.
Awesome, man.
Yeah. It worked out. You know, that's part of the exploration part of it though too. You know,
definitely.
It's like how, like, what do I do? Can I make a horror soundtrack for a John Carpenter film right now? You know, like, is that possible? What do I need to do? You know.
Yeah, and you have to like sort of just rack your experience and your like memory, but like, what makes sense in that context? Like, I guess I could maybe do this on the guitar, or maybe it's note percussion, or like just atmospheric percussion. Maybe I can like layer in some like synth textures or something. Yeah, you know. Yeah, for sure. Sort of experiment.
And that was, I think I got my first or second synth around that time was like a Pro 1, like a Behringer knockoff clone thing, and like I didn't even know it was a mono synth. I was just like turning knobs, making the weirdest noises I could for texture and all that.
Cool.
And I had a Kurzweil, like a workstation keyboard kind of thing that had some synth sounds on it, but they were all kind of generic, and there weren't like parameters you could change, you know. But I did know enough that like if this is a mono synth patch, then like, you know, like I hit this down here and I hit it up here, and if it has like a portamento glide, then it gets that weird, crazy kind of effect, you know, where you're scaling the entire scale structure from one side of the keyboard to the other.
Nice.
And I was using that at that point. I was like, oh, okay, I get what this, like, why they have this, you know, and like what different. And then like you get to a point where you're just like you're completely in this box of like synth sounds, and you're like, I need to turn the knobs, you know, like how do I get the knobs to turn, you know, because I need less of this, but there's no knob for me to turn for that, you know.
Yeah, right.
But then you just realize that you learned enough to actually use a full synth, you know, and all its components and things.
Yeah, to shape it properly for your application.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I had that keyboard specifically for a band that I was playing EPs and electric piano type sounds for mostly. Nice. And that was like kind of what I did in that band.
Cool.
And then just regular piano sounds. I needed like small combo organ sounds and stuff, and those are all organic, natural sounds that were on that keyboard, and it does great for that, you know.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, and honestly, like the synth sounds on it aren't bad, you know. But like, and then I started like I downloaded a Juno emulation just like a month ago or something.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, okay, saw waves, like.
Yeah, that's where you jump in there.
Yeah.
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 Sure,
I need super saw polysynths now. I just need one really bad.
Yeah, dude.
That's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful world. You know, there's so much to explore, and there's so many different. There's like an infinite number of shapes that you can like synthesize sounds into.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, man. And it's great.
Yeah, like. Yeah, I haven't even brushed the surface on it yet, and I've been studying it for about 2 years now, you know?
Oh, yeah.
When I started studying keyboards when I was going to buy that Kurzweil, I just went full into it, and because like I've never wanted to even play a synthesizer before, really, you know? But, I mean, growing up in the 80s, too, like, it's saturated in memories, too.
Yeah.
I downloaded a 1985 JP8X emulation the other day, and like start playing it, and I'm like, oh my god, I was in Disney once, like as a 3-year-old, and the Imaginarium.
This is the sound.
Yeah, exactly. Like I know that the guy just used this patch straight up. Like he didn't change anything on it.
Yeah,
It was just
like,
exactly.
Sounds good.
Yeah, exactly. This is just because it was just complete chaotic weirdness for this patch, you know.
Nice.
And they used it in the Imaginarium space in the world, you know, or whatever.
For sure. Or maybe you hear like all of a sudden it's the soundtrack of Star Trek Next Generation.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Like a huge pad.
Yeah. And there's like a crystalline sound.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. So I've definitely grew up in the vein of Star Trek a lot, where to the point where like whole chord progressions that I've created sometimes were based off of the fact that I thought it was from a Star Trek movie, you know? Because like I have no idea what this chord is, but it sounds like the change that you would make in Star Trek to the Voyage Home or for the Voyage Home or whatever that movie was. I'm like, I knew that soundtrack so well in my mind that I just knew that progression was from there, you know?
Nice. Awesome, man.
And it was like I think I put it to like some kind of Cuban beat or something, you know? So I'm just like, whatever, here we go.
Captain Picard meets Cuban Pete.
Yeah, exactly. It's weird how music is so just saturated in memories.
Yeah, it's so linked to the memory sense.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of uncanny the way you'll hear something and it'll activate all sorts of like a chain of memories or a chain of emotions.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's very beautiful, but like, yeah, it's just kind of how our mind works, man.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And so with these like I've been like downloading so many old synth emulations on my computer, just playing them as MIDI keyboard stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like it's so weird how many of the sounds that you just know inherently growing up in that era when they were all. I mean, that in the 80s was like synth war era, you know, like the
synth war.
Yeah, it really was, man.
Like who has the biggest baddest synth sound?
Well, not even that, but it was like this from the 70s. Everything was analog, you know.
Yeah.
And then and everything was just huge and super expensive. And then they're like, how do we get a keyboard that's smaller and more compact for regular people to buy, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so the Roland came out with the Juno, which only had one digitally controlled oscillator.
Yeah.
You know, they were trying, like, digital was the new thing. And then Yamaha the next year came out with the DX7, which was all FM based synthesis.
Yeah.
Which was all completely digital.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's like, oh my god, a whole new type of synthesis, and like, you know, and that sold like crazy, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And then Roland didn't even know how to make anything compared to it, so they're like just putting the word digital on anything that was just analog, you know, and trying to make it as digital as possible.
Yeah.
And so you had these like analog synths that they were making, the JP3X, JP8X, and then the Alpha Juno, and like it was just a battle, man. Like, and then Korg was over there with the Poly 6 and like the 600 or whatever it was.
What you mean. So it was like the battle for like digitalization and reproduction of the analog format in the digital territory.
And it was a battle all through the 80s, because Roland didn't come out with the D50 until like 89 or something like that.
Yeah.
And then it was like this whole combination synth of like analog meets digital, and they like had a whole different take on it, you know.
Yeah.
And really no one's done it since, but it was really, and it was, all the keyboards were huge. Like all the keyboards were at least 61 keys or bigger, you know.
Chunky.
Yeah. Huge synths, you know.
Yeah.
And like the tech was really shitty at that point too, so it's like you couldn't make them smaller anyway, you know.
Right.
Like the boards were just ginormous, and like, you know.
It was like multiple PCB boards.
Yes.
Like, it was like the main board, and there's like all these smaller daughter boards that are in there.
Yeah. And you have like the old Junos had these transistors that would melt over time, you know. Ooh. So that would change the sound and shit.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
Yeah,
you get that melting transistor tone.
Yeah.
That definitely sounds like a tone hound thing to search out.
Yeah.
It's like, this one is at 99% degradation. Oh yeah.
Well, and then
that's the darkness I was looking for.
Exactly. Yeah. And now they're like emulating those vintage sounds where like the Prophet 5s, the new ones, have that vintage knob on them that like have the number 1, 2, 3, and 4 on it, so that it's like the farther you turn the knob, the farther back in time it sounds like, you know.
Oh.
Like the more like degradation it sounds like is in the oscillators.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
And it really has that feeling.
Nice.
It detunes things in weird ways. And
now, have you ever had the opportunity to fool around with a Mellotron?
Just the emulations,
yeah, for sure. Those things are so cool, man.
Yeah.
With the tape replay.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about like degradation. Like the tapes degrade on those things. There's so much cool ass texture that comes out.
Yeah.
I love it when Mellotron shows up on the track. Like, I don't know if you listen to Opeth at all.
So I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
So like progressive metal band.
Yeah.
Like, at one time they were like almost like black metal, death metal, but like they sort of transitioned more into like being prog over the years.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, but they use that type of texture so frequently, and it just lends this type of like beautiful eeriness.
Yeah.
That like you can't get that sound with anything else. It's supposed to be like strings.
Yeah.
But it's like this weird, like shimmery, fluttery, like string emulation.
Yeah, they do it so well, those Mellotrons. And like the flute and the strings.
Yeah.
And then the combination
Strawberry
effect.
Fields, man.
Yeah.
The flute, I mean, that's
exactly
the tone.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep. And that's like iconic, where like every emulation of it that there ever is has like a Strawberry Fields patch, you know?
Yes, absolutely.
And you're like, it completely takes you back, and it's completely like the article, you know. It's like genuine article of Strawberry Fields. You're like, dude. Oh my god, I get to play the Beatles song.
Take my money.
Yeah. It's so weird. Yeah.
For sure, man. For sure.
Or like any patch like that takes you back. Like there's a patch on my Kurzweil that's just called the Woodstock Clunker. And it's basically the exact keyboard sound from like Joni Mitchell playing the song Woodstock that she wrote right after Woodstock happened, and then Crosby, Stills and Nash covered it later. But the original version was on this like Rhodes, that like had a certain amount of delay on it and just sounds really thick, you know.
Nice.
And that patch is like amazing. It's just like, whoa, this is the song, you know. Or there's another patch on there that's like an old No Quarter by Zeppelin like patch, you know. That's just like boom, doo doo doo, bing, boom, and it just has that like.
With that like heavy phaser on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah, you don't realize how weird that sounds until you're playing the thing, you know.
Oh yeah.
It's so cool. We live in such a cool time musically.
We do, man. It's, I mean, as far as like being able to like reproduce the sounds of like iconic records and like artists and the availability of instruments and like the quality of digital emulation that we have.
Yeah, yeah.
Like accessibility is at an all-time high. We're sort of living in a golden age.
For sure.
Really, and it's just incredible. You know, I again come back to like we have so many tools available to us.
Yeah.
But what do we do with all of them?
I know. You know, and it becomes
overwhelming.
It's
overwhelming, man.
Definitely. You know? Definitely.
Yeah.
And then you got to take it back to basics. I love experiences where like it was 2 weeks ago, I think. I just kind of randomly I ended up becoming the percussionist in a orchestra pit for a theatrical production.
Nice, man.
Yeah. And it was like something I've never done. I've never played drums in an actual band before, other than just in my own recordings, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
But somehow I got the nod from my buddy who's a drummer, and he couldn't do this gig, and they had asked him, you know? So they're like, oh, BB can do this. And I was like, okay, sure, you know? And so
nice.
I show up, and they're like, hey, you know how to read, you know, drum sheet music? I'm like, no, never done it, you know? So like, well, you know how to read sheet music though, right? I'm like, yeah, kind of, you know? They're like, oh, this is way easier. I'm like, okay, cool, you know. First song, just completely overwhelmed. It's like you have to count on time to what he's doing, like, and it's the time signatures from measure to measure are like 5/4, 6/4, 3/4 for 7 bars, like, and then it goes into cut time, and then you're like.
You got yourself into trouble.
Yeah. That whole first song, I'm like completely lost in like.
Oh man, I have a very similar experience.
Yeah.
Where I wound up playing bass on a jazz record.
Oh shit.
And it was like a few simple standards. I'm like, I was playing them before, no problem. But you know, I don't do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
for sure.
I showed up to the session, and we played through the songs. And like, man, I'd like boof the forms so hard, man. It was like, oh my god, I can't believe I just screwed this cat's record up.
Yeah,
you know
I mean?
Right. But he kept the tracks.
Oh, damn.
I guess he thought they were okay.
There you go, right?
You know
yeah,
I mean?
for sure.
It was real jazzy.
Yeah, exactly. You got the extra jazz
sure.
notes in there
for
just
sure.
for posterity's sake. Yeah.
Some chord transformations.
Well, that's how jazz is, though, too. You know,
for
like
sure. You went down in a methodical and purposeful way, but these are standards, man. And it's like,
well,
oh man,
right.
Yeah.
But even the old pros, though, man, like John Coltrane going to that piano player for Giant Steps, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the old legend where the piano player is like pro studio musician. And like, but the key changes are like key change, you know, like 251, 251 into this 251 into this 251.
Just so obscene.
Yeah, and then it gets to the piano player's solo section. And he's just going, and it's just like that's what he played. And then Coltrane comes in, and he's just going, you know, all over the place. And then the piano player's like, all right, let's try this again. And he's like, nope, that's good. We got it. And he's like, what? Like, okay. And it becomes like one of the most iconic jazz, you know, recordings of all time. And he had no idea what he was doing, you know? It's so just
that's amazing.
Indicative, you know?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
And,
wow.
Yeah, right? But yeah, it's so that genre though too, you know, just pushing boundaries to the point where the people don't even know what they're doing on it, and then it's just like, and sometimes that's better, you know, and that's like what we were talking about, like the old synths where they're just out of tune, like that's what we're trying to do. Like we put a knob on it to make it worse, you know?
Yes. Yeah, or it gets like a cool vibrato or something.
Yeah.
It's like now it's like not making the correct pitch, but it's doing another interesting thing sonically.
Yes. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And that's so cool about music is that it just everything just melts and blends together to the point where you know, like whatever is you think is correct or whatever words that we're using to try to describe it break down, you know.
Right. Well, I mean, you know, the whole thing with like music theory is that it's just a language to describe what's being done.
Yeah.
But it doesn't it's not the way to make music necessarily.
No.
You know what I mean?
Not at all.
No, because you don't arrive at successful music production probably by just like going to like music theory. I mean, you can make songs that way.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially if you like have a library and a language for describing like say this is the harmonic vocabulary that we use to like this is the chord progression and we can express this way.
Yeah.
And then we might develop a melody by playing these chord tones, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But at its root, it's just a language for describing what's happening with the sounds. And you could be outside of that, no problem.
Yeah, exactly.
You can get outside of that in a hurry.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially if you're just playing along and then you hit the wrong note and you're like, what is that note? You know? And then and then you just like are like, all right, I want to hit that note more because that's great. You know, whatever that flavor is in that part. I mean, like when
sweet barbecue.
Right. I went through a bunch of theory classes in my early 20s.
Yeah.
And then when I got out of that, the only really takeaway that I kept was like the 1 and the 5, and then everything else I just didn't care. And I just made a rock band based off of those ideas.
That's rock and roll anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like I knew, like the way that I was writing riffs was completely by ear. I'm just like bum 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 no bum 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 oh yeah okay and it's just like I had no idea what any of the notes were.
For sure. Man.
I'm just like making up melodies based off of what I thought sounded cool.
Yeah.
And
the way it is.
Yeah, exactly. But I knew in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, I know that this is the 1 though, and then I know where the 5 is, and in the breakdown, I'll go to the 5 and start from there, and then go back to the 1, or whatever.
And you see, then it's useful because then you have a language and a vocabulary for describing what you're doing.
Yes.
To other musicians.
Yeah, that's exactly why I did it too.
Yes. Yeah.
Because there was going to be a bass player in the band, and I'm like, how do I even translate just a ton of notes? And I'm just like, I don't want to just put these together arbitrarily, Yeah. I want some kind of a structure to be able to communicate.
Yeah, right, definitely.
But they were just kind of like oddball outside the, any of those scale structures anyway. But
yeah.
I basically just took like patterns that I learned from like the Melvins and like Tool and like Mastodon and just use those patterns to like put together songs essentially.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's what they all did.
System of a Down, Black Sabbath, like all of those played a key component in the songwriting that I was doing at that time.
Nice.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I like that album a lot, or those albums at that time period.
For sure, man. That's where it's at.
Yeah. And I don't know. Music's, I mean, obviously, what I do every day mostly.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I can get away to do it.
Hell yeah, dude.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, when you get the moment,
Yeah.
Or to seek the moment, I think is a key of ongoing practice.
Yeah.
So make it a point. Like I've returned to this. I'm gonna sit down and play guitar now. Or I'm gonna just hit record and just see what I come up with.
Exactly. And there's also the other side of it. If you're doing it all day, every day, it doesn't work either. Because you just kind of like get into
that's
this...
obsessive.
Yeah, for sure.
Like you gotta live your life. You gotta live like a full life, and I feel like the ideas come much more easily anyhow.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no such thing as really like writer's block, but I think that there is such a thing as like, just like being in a loop or something. Where you're just like constantly just doing the same thing over and over again. You're chasing your own tail, and you're like, why can't I do this? Or why doesn't this sound good? It's because, man, if you listen to the same song like 10,000 times in a row, like you just don't even know what you're listening to anymore.
Yes.
That's a problem.
You lose context.
Yes. I recently just, and like I try to not listen to things too much now, but even so, like you still need like outside perspective on things, I think.
Yeah.
To even know where you are on things. Even like if I write like a new song sometimes, and then I'll be in front of people playing it, and I'm like, oh wow, why would I want to play this? I don't want to play this in front of people, you know. But if I was, I would play it like this. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
This is too embarrassing the other way, or
yeah,
something.
For sure,
like there's something weird.
It's the proving grounds.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, man.
Done that quite a few times.
It's good.
And then I released a song a week or two ago that like I thought was awesome, and then I was like, oh man, people are gonna eat this up, and then I promoted it on Facebook on like my Great Grandpa BB page or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I only got back like one comment that wasn't from a friend and was like, "This really sucks." And I was like,
"Oh my god, dude!"
And it made me laugh. You know,
that's rough.
And then I was like, "Do you care to elaborate?" Because I just hit the laugh button, you know. And then I was like actually laughing, and I was like, you know, please elaborate. And then she's like, well, it's just so weird, you know. I was like, okay, cool. And then I like listened to the song again, and I put like in context of like the one synth part that I had put in later on after I had originally recorded it.
Yeah.
I was so excited about it that I just left it in for the whole track, you know.
Oh.
And then I deleted like my whole first initial idea that I had written for that part.
Yeah.
And then when I went back and like thought about it later in that context of like, this sucks, like I'm like, why does this suck? And then I listened to it and I'm like, oh wow, this part makes everything I'm saying sound really creepy, you know? Because it was like the synth was just like this it was a really kind of spooky sounding synth, you know?
Oh, yeah.
But the tone of the words was not anywhere close to that. And somehow I didn't even pick up on that at all because no one else had ever heard it.
You weren't listening to the whole thing. You were hearing the parts.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a big problem.
Yeah. And then so I remixed it, and I'm like, oh wow, that part works perfectly for the second verse though, because the second verse is that feeling.
Yeah.
But the whole first part is a whole different feeling, you know. And so I completely changed back to the original thing and kept the second part the same.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, that really works now, I think, you know?
Yeah.
And who knows, right? But at the same time, like, I feel a lot better about it. Because I did have reservations about the song, too. Because I only released it in a certain limited capacity where you had to, like, go click a link to go listen to it, you know?
Gotcha. Yeah.
And so I knew that in the back of my mind I had reservations about it, but I was like, but I want to release it, and I just made this music video for it where like
yeah. And see how it does.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
Sure.
Exactly. And so now I'm gonna take it all down again and re-upload it, and
there you go.
Yeah. Like, whatever.
The process of refinement.
Nothing's completely finished till you're dead. You know, like that's
for sure, man. For sure.
That's
it's
right.
It's like when's the mix done? When you stop mixing.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it.
Yeah. It's like, I hit the publish button. Well, I'm just gonna delete it. So what are you gonna do about it? You know,
let it ride.
If you got a chance to download it back then, you got an old version of the song that no one else has.
Yeah. NFT.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Apparently, nobody paid the $1 that it took to get that one. So.
Sure didn't.
For a reason, obviously, because it sucked completely.
What are you gonna do, man?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. But yeah, man, artwork, water, society, culture. I think we hit the major themes, right?
Man, we covered every subject that you can imagine.
Yeah.
Podcasting is dope.
Especially when you do it with no holds bar, like no niche. Like I have
what are you talking about?
We're just talking. We're just talking about everything at once. You know?
Sure. Yeah.
But that's my favorite kind of podcast, anyway. Honestly.
For sure.
And they tell you in podcasting school or in the YouTubes, they're like, how do you improve your podcast? It's like, well, talk about one thing, talk about a niche. market for your podcast, and I get that.
Yeah.
I listen to a lot of those myself, you know. Yeah. But to actually do that feels like, man, I don't want to be in that world, you know. And it's like, yeah, if it fails massively, that's what it does. But at the same time, like, I'm having a great time and I'm learning a lot from it at the same time.
For sure, man.
So
yeah, it's just, you know, creating something, you know, having conversations. This is your travelogue.
Yeah, you know exactly. I mean? Yeah, that's all it's supposed to be, really. Yeah. That's the concept. Hell yeah. Well, yeah, you want to hang it up, man?
Let's hang it up.
All right, cool. Well, see you later. Good. Thanks for stopping by and, you know, being a part of this thing here.
It's been fun, man.
Hell yeah.
See y'all.